Kia ora, good evening. Several flood warnings have been broadcast by Environment Southland following heavy downpours in parts of the region. The Mataura River at Cattle Flat, the Oreti River at Lumsden Cableway and the Irthing Stream on Ellis Road are all above normal levels and rising. The Waiau River at Sunnyside is almost 3.5 metres above normal but steady. More rain is expected over coming days. Statistics New Zealand figures released today show that retail spending using electronic cards was flat during July 2014.
When adjusted for seasonal effects, retail spending was unchanged for July, as it was also in June 2014. Spending rose in 3 retail industries and fell in 3 during July, Business Indicators Manager Neil Kelly said. Durables and consumables had the biggest rises, while both vehicle-related industries fell. The 3 largest retail movements in July were durables up 9.8 million or 0.9%, consumables up 5.4 million or 0.3%, fuel down $4.8 million or 0.6%. Core retail spending, which excludes the vehicle-related industries, rose 0.5% in July. The total value of electronic card spending, including the 2 non-retail industries, services and non-retail, fell 0.1%. In unadjusted terms, 118 million transactions were made across all industries in July, with an average value of $51. The total amount spent across all transactions was $6 billion.
An Invercargill cafe has been selected as a finalist in the Best Cafe category in this year's Hospitality New Zealand Awards for Excellence. The Batch Cafe has been judged a finalist in both the Excellence in Training and Staff Development and Best Cafe categories. CEO of Hospitality New Zealand, Bruce Robertson, says the Batch Cafe epitomises the creme de la creme of New Zealand's hospitality industry and was selected after a comprehensive and thorough judges process. The awards encompass 15 categories and featuring all sectors of the industry, including country pubs and 5-star hotels through to restaurants and cafes. Winners will be announced in just over 4 weeks' time. There was a special screening of the environmental film 2 Degrees in the city yesterday. The film reveals the chaotic failure of the UN negotiations in Copenhagen and follows Port Augusta, a small Australian town, in its efforts to replace its coal-fired power stations with solar thermal power. 2 Degrees co-producer Ange Palmer was in the city for the special screening.
There's a number of reasons, I think, why action on climate's been so slow. One is because we actually have this sort of wiring in our brain. It's called the metaphysics of temporality, which basically means that our brains aren't very good at thinking long term. Even though we know that climate change is probable, our brains kind of tell us that it's not possible. So we're kind of wired for the tiger in the bushes to react to that, but when we're told that something's going to happen in the future, it's very difficult for us to get our heads around it. I think the other thing is that the government and mainstream media have comprehensively failed in educating and inspiring the public on climate.
How does this film work? How does the documentary get the message across?
So what we do in the film is we look at the challenges of the UN climate negotiation process. So we follow that climate process through 2009, and it ends in Copenhagen, where we see basically the flaws of the system. We see the conference collapse, but we are seeing it from a very personal perspective of people who were involved, and we kind of get a sense of the anguish and the futility of that process at the time. And then we go to a community-led campaign in South Australia where the community are making a stand to get their coal-fired power stations replaced with solar thermal. And importantly, the campaign is led by a very feisty 80-year-old woman. She's the mayor of the town. She's been serving as mayor as 30 years, and she's wonderful. She's got big gold earrings and crazy red hair. She's sort of like a gypsy queen. And then there are all these other very kind of ordinary sort of buxom women sitting around the dining table deciding that they're going to make this happen. And then we see the Australian Youth Climate Coalition walk to Parliament to take this vote which the community have had to Parliament, and that's 300 kilometres away. So it's very inspiring. I mean, it was important for us with the film to feel that we weren't going to leave people feeling glum, and we didn't want people to go out and slit their wrists after watching our film. We wanted them to feel uplifted and inspired. And this is where I just think that the media have completely failed in getting this, inspiration happening in people. What we know about climate change education is that giving people facts and figures doesn't work particularly well. I mean, it was useful 8 years ago when the Inconvenient Truth came out to sort of, get that wider sort of information out to the public. But with the science we know the science is, it's indisputable now. We know what's happening on the planet. And people don't respond when we just tell them there's a crisis, an emergency, and we're all about to die, because people don't want to think about stuff like that. What we need to, we need to inspire people about climate heaven rather than climate hell. So rather than focus on how bad it's all going to be and the polar bears are all dying, we need to actually think about how good it's going to be when we move to a more sustainable future. And there's no doubt we're going there because we don't have any choice. And I think sometimes it seems that there isn't much action happening on climate, but in fact, there are millions of people all around the world and communities all across the world who are in fact engaging and making changes. It's a concept of a million tiny lights. There's not one solution to climate change. There's hundreds of millions of solutions, and we all are part of that. And when we all jump in and start to act, then we sort of get this super grid of light, and the change is coming, it's happening.
The 21st Boat Show proved a huge success for organisers, and inquiries are expected to keep boat retailers busy for several months to come. It's estimated around 6,000 people ventured to Invercargill Stadium Southland to see the latest in what local and national boating retailers have to offer over the weekend. Close to 70 boats were on display, including the latest in jet skis and accessories. Several sales were made at the show, along with demo bookings and trade-ins to price. Organisers say despite the economic downturn affecting the industry in recent years, signs are positive, with sales slowly trending upwards. It's been 5 years since the last Southland Boat Show was held in the region, and organisers are already planning next year's. Stay with us. Coming up after the break, food for fines and retaining our heritage in the south. Welcome back. This week is Library Week, and to celebrate, Invercargill's Public Library is holding an amnesty with a difference. This week, anyone with fines for late returns has a chance to give back to the animal community by swapping cat or dog food in return for having library fines wiped.
So this week, if you bring in either some cat food, some dog food, or even some dog treats, we're going to waive $5 off your library overdue fines.
How quickly do library fines stack up?
You'd be surprised. It's 20 cents a day per book. So if you've got a big bunch of books, that's nearly $10 already, and that's your limit, or 50 cents for electronic resources a day as well.
So what's the issue length of time that you get given?
So for books you get a month, and for our electronic resources you get a week. But it's easy enough to do, even just one day over, and there's 20 cents fine. We do have email alerts, so since we've brought those in, I think it's a lot easier for people to keep track of their overdues. So they can use their online account. Their account's linked to our website, so you can check your books, see when they're due, and we also have email automations. So they just give you a wee notification 3 days before things are due.
Okay, so the fines stack up quite quickly. You're offering it as a free amnesty this week only?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so this week is Library Week, so once a year we celebrate libraries and we do something fun. Our theme this year is Pause to Read, so it's all about animals and embracing animal stories, and we thought it would be a really good chance to reach out to our community and help the SPCA.
So normally they'd hand them over and the amnesty would be, the fines would be wiped without having to give anything back, but this year the cat and the dog food could be a good option?
Yes, yeah. So it's right before puppy and kitten season, so we're hoping to get a big amount so that when those little puppies and kittens all get rushed into the SPCA, there's enough food to feed them all. For Library Week last year we had a 50s theme, and it was very adult orientated, so we had lots of cool events for adults. So this year we're trying to get in those kids as well. We have an animal dress up day on Thursday. We can come in, get your face painted, dress up like an animal, and then this weekend we have the Greyhound Society coming in, bringing in greyhounds, so you can come and pet them, read to them, just like you might have seen in Auckland a wee while ago. So we're giving that a try as well. Well, you can get cheap, relatively cheap cat and dog food, and if you've got animals you're quite likely to have that already lying around. But it's also an opportunity to get that wiped as well as helping the community.
What happens to those people that don't take their library books back on time or take advantage of amnesties when they come up?
Once you hit $10, then you can't issue anymore, so it restricts you from being able to borrow. And with our growing collection, especially with our DVDs and PlayStation, Xbox games, it's quite limiting, so you want to get those fines paid so you can take advantage of those new services.
Gore District residents are invited to a special ceremony to acknowledge the first Expeditionary Force volunteers who left Gore District by train 100 years ago tomorrow. The service will be held at 3:30 tomorrow by the flagpoles at the Gore RSA on Civic Avenue. Following the ceremony, Gore District Mayor Tracy Hicks and representatives of the Gore RSA will lay wreaths in memory of the fallen from the district. The Southland Heritage Forum was held over the weekend. Amongst a host of speakers was Dr Jane Leggett. Dr Leggett's research work includes museum and tourism, museum and heritage development and partnerships with community stakeholders. She says Southland has unique heritage assets. The challenge, she says, is to have them included on visitor itineraries.
I think talking to each other, which is what's happening here at the Heritage Forum, is a great start, and understanding what other people have got in what they can offer to a joint approach for joint marketing, either just of the heritage assets here in Southland or in collaboration with other tourism operations or business ventures. Really having a collective voice helps, and I think that's already happening. But I think being able to articulate clearly and succinctly what their particular bit of heritage can add to the community, show people that they've got something to be proud of, that's important. I've already been, I think, 2 or 3 times down here as a visitor or a heritage aficionado, and I've been impressed by places like Riverton, which has a wonderful mix of a little bit of the main street with some heritage buildings, an excellent heritage feature in Te Hikoi. It's a mix of museum and visitor information centre, and it's also been well sited on the bay there. And when the tide is in and you get the reflection from the mountain, it's quite magical. I think it's a glorious spot. And then there's the Gemstone Bay and some other beaches around there, and the little fishing port, as well as the odd place that you can have a drink and eat. And I think I was once here in the summer, an ice cream shop as well. So there's just a nice little sense that it's a kind of boutique experience in one place, but lots of different facets to it. And while it's on the main road and you could go whizzing through, it's trying to get people to stop is the challenge. But when you do, it's really worthwhile.
Award-winning folk singer Phil Garland performed at the South Museum and Art Gallery on Saturday in his only Invercargill performance. Phil has spent a lifetime researching, collecting, writing and performing Kiwi songs. Often described as a national living treasure and New Zealand's foremost and finest heritage balladeer, Garland received a QSM for services to New Zealand folk music in the 2014 Queen's Birthday Honours. With 18 albums under his belt, he's no stranger to music awards, having won Folk Album of the Year at the New Zealand Music Awards 3 times. Garland has performed extensively around the world promoting Kiwi musical heritage with a blended presentation of songs, ballads, stories and yarns that introduce audiences to the musical heart of New Zealand and its people. And next up on sport, the highlights from the Stags' final pre-season game against Otago in Alexandra on Friday. From the news team, good night.